think right now we're in this window of opportunity where both sides have had an incentive to at least stabilize relations, though we haven't seen much substantive improvement. That window is set to close later this year. On the one hand, you have President Xi Jinping of China who wants a positive visit to San Francisco for APEC, who wants to be able to come back and show the people and show other political elites in China that he has something to show for that trip. And then on the other hand, you have President Biden, who is coming out of a period where the incentive to posture tough ahead of elections has been low, where he's consolidated some of the gains he's made in terms of establishing a very tough framework for relations with China and tried to pivot back towards stabilization. But as the elections approach in the U.S. and after APEC ends, those incentives are likely to diminish, and we could be back to the situation of earlier this year and all of the previous 2 years where most of the political incentives were pushing towards deterioration in bilateral relations.
Gabriel, I'll give you a reason that they could play nice, or I'll give you a reason which is the same reason why actually things could deteriorate, and that is the fact that if you add the situation between China and US to the situation in China domestically, then it becomes more complicated. China is really struggling to galvanize its economy at the moment, and I think that's a bit of an understatement as well. Does this mean, though, because of their economic problems domestically, they're more likely to find rapprochement with the United States, or actually it could go the other way and become a more fraught trans-Pacific relationship as they seek to find blame for others for the current problems?
I don't think so, because I think China's leadership has come to terms with the fact that there's not much they are willing to do or could feasibly offer the U.S. side that would reduce the degree of hostility and the determination to pursue a containment policy, Washington's determination to do so. And so any concessions they might make, which they're reluctant to do on their own terms, they're going to be even more reluctant given they don't believe that's going to yield benefits in Washington. So the space for substantive compromise is really quite limited. And that's why we've seen this series of meetings where the two sides have talked nice about improving communication, but we really haven't seen any policy deliverables. Any deliverables would be really painful for China, and they'd only be willing to make those concessions if they thought it could actually change the tone and change the attitude in Washington, and they don't have that kind of confidence.
Yeah, Gabriel, then what's the success here? What at the end of this, if that's the situation, it's going to be difficult for China to concede any ground then, and yet they still want those export controls to be rolled back somewhat, and you can tell then that there'll probably be a carrot and a stick situation here. Where does the success come from? How do you mark success from this trip?
Well, I think the best we can hope for is further signals that at least things aren't going to get worse. I mean, from the perspective of my clients, there are obviously many sanctions and restrictions in place on trade and investment, but the scope for continued trade investment remains wide. I think for the U.S. and Chinese business community, some predictability, knowing that at least things aren't going to get worse, knowing that this is the policy framework, this is what is and isn't allowed right now, and we can invest on that basis with a degree of confidence that the floor is not going to be pulled out from under us. That would be a kind of success. Now, we're not going back to the good old days, but knowing what the rules are and knowing what kinds of sectors will remain outside the small yard, outside the high fence, if you will help at least maintain a baseline of trade and investment relations going forward.
Gabriel.